Well, we want to welcome you back to Theologically Speaking, and we're, of course, coming from BJU Seminary, and trust that our episodes this semester have been an encouragement to you as we've been meeting a number of folks that are connected with the university and with the seminary. And today we have the privilege of hearing from Dr. Bruce McAllister. We're actually going to be with him for a couple of episodes, and we're going to be covering a subject that is dear to his heart, and that is the ministry of preparing pastors for ministry. And of course, he has a lot of years of experience in that area before the Lord opened the door for him to serve now as our president. And so we want to welcome you, Dr. McAllister, and maybe just begin by telling us how it's been going as you have started into this new role.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you today, and I'm really having the time of my life. I'm enjoying it. I'm really filled with confidence in the Lord.
Amen.
Because of His grace. I believe that thousands of people are praying for BJU, and particularly at this season. And I have these people look into my eyes. Sometimes they stare into my eyes for an extended period of time. And sometimes with moist eyes or tears in their eyes, they say, "I am praying for you." And I know that by that they mean different things. Some of them, I think, have a little warning in their eyes. They're going to they want me to do the right thing. And then they really want BJU to flourish.
Amen.
And so I believe God is answering their prayers, not because of me, just because of who God is and what He's doing. And we have had, I think, a wonderful start to the school year. The students are responding well. There's joy in their hearts. We see it in the way they respond to chapel. I see it in the way that they respond to me when I'm out about on campus. And so I tell the students, the most important thing you can wear is a smile. So I've been getting those smiles back at me, and we really want their hearts more than anything else. And so I've had the privilege to serve here for many years. I would have never dreamed I would be doing what I'm doing now. And so I'm very thankful for my wife, Ellen, and her support in this new venture, and the team that God's brought around us, the board of trustees. It's just been so pleasant. It may be a little honeymoon experience right now. I don't know, but I've been at it for several months, and I've been here for essentially 45 years. If you count my student years, it's longer than that. So my undergrad years. So God's been really good.
Amen. Well, we're very thankful that you were willing to take on this role. It's a huge challenge, but I have the same sense as you that the Lord is working, that the students are responsive, and that God is keeping everyone encouraged as we step forward. So we are praying for you here at the seminary as well, and very thankful for your leadership. I think probably a lot in our audience are familiar with you and the different roles that you've had through the years, but particularly for those who may not know you, can you just give a summary of your ministry experience and particularly what you've done here at the university?
Well, I took a Bible education undergrad degree, which was 153 hours, teacher's certificate in Bible, and student taught at Bob Jones Academy with senior Bible largely back in that student teaching experience. And so then I graduated that year and did a master's in pastoral studies to start with, and did it kind of quickly, did it basically in a calendar year. And during that first year, I was a GA serving Dr. Richard Rupp as Director of Ministerial Training. That's what he was new in that role, and Student Outreach Ministries. And as it turned out, in the goodwill of God, I ended up doing that part of my ministry here for the next 14 years, serving Dr. Rupp. And so he was my primary mentor, and we worked together closely, and such a friend and mentor in so many ways. And so I taught Bible at Bob Jones Academy for 4 years, an additional 7 years teaching a little preaching class at Bob Jones Academy, but started teaching in the university in 1983. So Bible classes, ministry classes. Most of the older guys remember me teaching personal evangelism,
yes.
which I did that for 7 years. 3 times a year. So I had taught that course 21 times. As I travel, people say, I had you for personal evangelism. So that marks them in their age and stuff like that. So I would teach a half load of classes and then would help Dr. Rupp and student ministries, the other half of my load. And then in those early days, I was either planting a church or pastoring a church or helping another church get planted. So I did a lot of weekend work as well. And then in 1991, I became director of ministerial training. Dr. Rupp retired. So I took that role, and I was essentially, never by this title, but I was essentially also the director of church planting because Dr. Holmes retired about the same time, Dr. Otis Holmes, who had done such a fabulous work with church planting. And so I followed him and, had a connection to GFA as well on their board, and church planting began to be supported by GFA. So it's a combination of things I did. I traveled with Dr. Bob in a small team and did many, many pastor meetings around the country. So when I was a young man, I would have never dreamed I'd have all these privileges of ministry here and elsewhere. And then having the privilege I went on and took an MDiv after the first weekend ministry, church planting. I realized what I still needed, so I finished the MDiv in '88 and then plowed on toward the DMin and got the doctor of ministry degree in 1995. My connection with the seminary has largely been as a student. I did teach church leadership and administration course a couple of years when Steve Hankins was dean, and I enjoyed it, but it about killed me because Steve's expectations were so high for that class and for me, and he was my good friend. But when it came to professional expectations, that's where the friendship ended. And he said, "You're going to cut the mustard, buddy." So it was good. I added it on to everything else I was doing, if I recall. So I enjoyed it, and it actually helped me get prepared for what I'm doing now. So thankful for that.
Wow. Well, thank you for all those years of service. And I was a student for some of those years. I think I had you for personal evangelism and for 2 or 3 ministerial classes as well.
Yeah.
I think the book of Acts as well. Didn't you teach
Yeah,
Acts
I did.
at
I
one
taught
point?
Acts 5 years.
I believe I remember that course. And
well, I hope most people that have me in those early years will forget. Sometimes I'll meet a student somewhere and they'll say, "I think I had you for," what they mean, they can't remember my name. And I know I've really made an impact on their lives if they don't know my name. So it's all good.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's quite a variety of things that, between your education and the ministry roles the Lord has enabled you to do. And it certainly has a lot to do with what we want to talk about today, which is the importance for ministerial training and the vision that you have and that we here at the seminary have to be used of God to prepare new generations of servants for the local church. Yeah. And I'd like to ask, just on a personal note, because you did go through so many courses and the programs and the seminary here, how do you think that shaped your life, both personally and in terms of ministry? Maybe some of the people that the Lord used to shape you for even what you're doing now. Sure. People love to hear stories of the impact of others on us. So,
well, that's easy to talk about. Okay. So I would say course by course in the seminary, I felt like virtually every course opened up a whole new vista of information, understanding, ministry perspective or skills or biblical knowledge or whatever it was. And so I used to talk about it to undergrad students like going up to the top floor of the old World Trade Center in New York City. I think I've been up there probably 10 times. And you come up the elevator shaft and you come out and you're looking at Brooklyn. And then you just walk around the entire floor looking out. This is glassed in, and you're seeing different parts of New York City. And then you take go up additional to the fresh air area if it's open, and then you see the city really, in a sense, all in that 360 degree at one time. And so to me, seminary did that for me. It opened my understanding, gave me another lens, and then eventually you begin to correlate those dimensions of understanding and learning, and it affects your preaching, it affects your understanding, it gives you ministry skills that you likely would not have naturally developed, at least not as quickly. So seminary did that for me. And another analogy would be like when you advance through elementary school and you go to junior high, in my day, you went from elementary school, included sixth grade, then you would jump to seventh grade, and you were kind of fearful because it's like, well, that's where the big kids are. And then you do that for 2 or 3 years. And then for me, ninth grade was the end of junior high there in Huntsville, Alabama. And then I changed schools actually, and then went to high school in another town. And so that was the new big leagues. Then you go to college, that's the new big leagues as a freshman in college. Then you go to seminary and you feel like, woo, this is, this, I never even would have dreamed I would go to seminary or grad school as a younger guy. And then you find out really, yes, every level is different and it's more in depth or more challenging, but you're ready for that. And you need that. And it stretches you, but then you realize, okay, by God's grace, I can do this. And all of my life has been like that, where whatever the next phase is, planning a church or teaching a class that I'd never taught before or whatever it was like, wow, I don't know if I can do this. And I would have a certain amount of hesitancy about whatever that was, the next step. And then you just by faith take that step, and then God by his grace helps you to accomplish what he has for you. So yeah. As far as people go, of course, Dr. Richard Rupp, and I had him in undergraduate pulpit speech or preaching, and he was the master preacher. He was the preacher's preacher, and he was, he was a gentle-spirited gentleman in person, but in the classroom, he was full of vim, vigor, and vitality. He was a preacher. He had the Spirit of God. He wore a black suit, white shirt every day in those days. And he was real serious about the expectations he had for us preaching well as we were juniors in college. But for me, that relationship turned personal once I became his assistant. He performed our wedding. And when I was a young pastor, I was picking his brain very frequently about how to handle different things. So he and I probably talked about hundreds of hours in his office. So what a great resource that was. And so I highly regarded him. Dr. Stuart Custer made a real impact on my life. Brilliant, scholarly, pastoral demeanor, very devotional. He could take that concrete classroom that we were in. Oftentimes in the old days, it wasn't in this building. This building wasn't built yet. So in the alumni building, first floor, 116 or whatever, the room, and he could turn a classroom into a cathedral of worship. One summer, I had him for English Bible Revelation. I think I had him for Greek Revelation in Greek as well. Maybe not the same summer, but he'd probably been up half the night preparing. I don't know, but when he came to class, you could just see the glow of God on his face, and he would open the scriptures and he would explain things. He would talk about the books that he'd read on this or information from those books, but he was very devout in his way of teaching. So he made a really deep impact on my life. Dr. Custer exemplified Dr. Bob Sr.'s saying, simplicity is truth's most becoming garb. So he was very simple in his delivery, but I think he was profound in his grasp of the truth, and due to the gifts God had given to him. And of course, he read a book a day, and he would quip. He'd say, "Well, actually, it's a book a night," So he was cute about that. He didn't teach seminary here really, but Dr. Walter Fremont, Dean of the School of Education, was also made a great impact in my life. He's the one that encouraged me to take Bible education when I was still in high school. I visited his class, and he was handing out the Bible education program at the door as we were leaving, encouraging us to teach Bible in a Christian school. So that simple encouragement, another person encouraged me to do that. I think because they wanted me to have something to fall back on if I failed in the ministry. I think it's what the other motivation was there, which is not a bad idea. But so I took the teacher program, and it was very demanding. but I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if Dr. Fremont hadn't given me that encouragement. He was a dynamic, totally different
Yes.
personality, say, than Dr. Custer
Mm.
or Dr. Rupp, and so he was a soul winner. He was a little eccentric, but not in a weird way, just very, very dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved him very much. And he got Lou Gehrig's disease later in life and for a very long time. And I remember going to see him on Christmas Eve. I just worked out in my schedule, went by. He was very close to death, but he still had a smile on his face and a gleam in his eye. And he was always full of praise. He had a little laptop. One time I was in his room at the hospital, and he was telling me things I needed to do in the ministerial program. So he's going through this. He couldn't really speak, but he had a list, and I remember he had a button on his laptop, and he could press the button, and it would sound like him, but in computer language, it would say, "Praise the Lord," like that. So he was just full of joy, and I'm sure he was like that to the day the Lord took him home. Dr. James Bellis was a blessing. Dr. Mike Barrett, Bob Bell, Terry Brood, these men. I had Hebrew from two of them. I didn't really enjoy the grind of that,
Right.
first year Hebrew, but they were Terry Rood and Mike Barrett. They kept our feet to the fire, and those ADF checks, if you remember those. So one mistake was a D, two mistakes was an F, and that's after studying 3 hours for that quiz. They didn't tell us it didn't really matter that much in the big scheme of things, but we thought we were all sunk. So they had us reading Hebrew in 9 weeks anyway. At least some people. But so it's just, and of course these men are my colleagues, so not merely my teachers, but we were also colleagues because I was taking grad work as a full-time faculty and staff member, and so I saw their lives and brushed shoulders with them a lot, and just very grateful. Yeah. So
Well, that's great. I've been interviewing some other folks lately, and some of it has to do with their time in the seminary. And it's just really been challenging and inspirational to think about the impact so many years later of the investment they made, and their testimony has really been encouraging to me to stick it out and think about the long term. I forgot about the ADF checks because I'm teaching Hebrew now, and
they have it easy
they
today.
do. I was going to say I should share that with them whenever they start complaining about how hard it can be. But
I heard that Dr. Bob intervened on that one with somebody years ago. I don't know. That might be apocryphal, but whoever intervened, I'm glad they did.
It's
So.
funny. Yeah, it was a different time for sure.
Woo, buddy.
It really made you sweat.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, that is wonderful, and to see the long term as to how you're able to continue that in other people's lives. Just a great tradition the Lord has blessed us here with. The university is a liberal arts institution, and there are all kinds of different careers that people are preparing for. Even though Dr. Bob Sr., our founder, was an evangelist, he had a heart for liberal arts, and he brought people from a lot of backgrounds to give all those perspectives. But at the same time, we've always had a strong emphasis on those who are preparing for the ministry. And so could you talk about the place of ministerial training in the mission of Bob Jones University as a whole?
Right. Well, what you said is that this school was founded for the general education of youth, is the phrasing in the charter.
Yes.
And the way we use that language today, and for many years we've said liberal arts, which doesn't mean liberalism, of course. It means a generous supply, okay?
Yes.
A broad-based education. It's based on the Western model of education, having all the sciences and the languages as far as people can go with language, and the whole perspective of human learning. And, there is that sense in which all of that comes from God. So it's part of his created universe, and it's well worth pursuing and pursuing hard. in my own personal experience as a teacher and administrator, my efforts were largely focused upon ministerial training. And in fact, it was a slice of the overall picture of preparing men for ministry. It was the very practical part of ministerial training. So that's where I lived, ate, breathed, slept, that world for all those years. So my personal burden was being sure that with all of the other parts of learning, including liberal arts, but then within ministry training of languages, theology, church history, history of doctrine, all the things people especially get in seminary, that men would also be equipped to actually do the work of everyday local church administration, pastoral care, and all those kind of things that go along. Sometimes it almost becomes the stepchild, when in reality, most men are spending most of their day beyond their study, they're spending time with people.
That's right.
So we want to be sure they have good bedside manner. It's like a doctor goes to medical school for all those years, but when he gets done, if he's going to have a medical practice and not be a research doctor, but he's going to be a practitioner, he's got to have hopefully some good bedside manner and know how to relate to people and run a little medical business. So that's my perspective. I think it's awkward to try to prioritize all of this in our setting, because if God has called a person to be a businessman, or a person in the field of science, or in the field of medicine, or in the field of fine arts, communication, whatever that may be, then we would want them to be fully equipped in the best of skills in their arena. So I'm always careful to say that if you do something other than ministry, that does not make you a second-class citizen. I hate to even say that, because it obviously doesn't. And to me, the emphasis in the New Testament on spiritual gifts, one another responsibilities, you have those that God has called and gifted for church leadership. You have men that serve as deacons or elders in these churches, and most of them are going to be focused in other professions for their livelihood. But they take the gifts God's given to them, and they cooperate, work with a pastor, and everyone working together humbly and properly to advance the cause of the gospel. If you have a church of 100 people, you probably have one pastor.
Right.
You might have two, but you probably have one that's really the full-time guy, and the way we look at it. And so there's no competitiveness in one sense, but then we most definitely need to cultivate those men who are called and gifted by God to be fully equipped and equipped at a high level for effective ministry. So a seminary is it's something like a medical school, I guess you would say, for men going into the ministry, depending on, say, how far they go and what their aptitudes are. But personally, this sounds a little odd, but I look at, say, a Master of Divinity, or a doctorate beyond that, say, as something like the liberal arts of seminary, if you will, because it's broad in its offerings, and you don't always appreciate every portion of it when you're in school, but later on you look back and go, I'm so glad. Almost everything I've had in seminary personally, I would look back and say, I am so glad I had that. I would not want to be without that now that I've had it and learned how to use it in ministry. So some of it's perspective, some of it's skill set. So
definitely. Yep. Well, that's a really good big picture. And as I think about my own experience and what I'm doing, I'm not so much on the practical side, but on the exegetical and theological side. But even I will tell the students that although preaching, in a sense, is the main thing that you're doing, it is not the only thing. And in a sense, it's the easiest part. Because you're dealing with a fixed text, and you're giving a monologue in your sermon. But it's when you're out there working individually with people or with church leadership that you can really be stretched in terms of your abilities and just needing the Lord's wisdom to figure out what to do. So it is true. We need that very broad-based preparation. And I've been encouraged here at the university that more and more there's an emphasis on no matter what the career is, that we are all partnering
Right.
for the Lord. And even in our missions conference this week, there's been an emphasis on business as missions.
Right.
And no matter what your career is, using that as a venue to assist in the Great Commission. And of course, there's local church involvement as a part of that. I remember when I first took the pastorate of a church about half hour away from here that I recalled how many times Dr. Bob would urge the students to consider putting your career on hold, finding some small church out there where you can come alongside the pastor, get whatever job you can, and be a faithful layperson, Sunday school teacher, whatever. I always understood the need for that, but I was in a larger church here. But you get away into some smaller ministry,
Yeah.
the difference one committed
That's right.
layperson can make is
That's
enormous.
right.
And so that's really the mindset that we want to be fostering, that
That's
we
right.
really are all in this together,
That's
no
right.
matter what it
That's
is
right.
that you're studying.
And from the perspective of call it the layman, they want to go to church and hear robust preaching.
That's right.
Informative preaching with depth, with a seriousness about it to feed their souls and their family. So, in a sense, those people would be pulling for, like cheering for the men that are headed into the ministry, their families, their wife, and then and vice versa. The men that are preaching, they're cheering on the men and women that are out there in the workforce or in the home, and it all works together. And here's what I found, Ken, over the years. Like, I've spoken on the call to the ministry very, very many times, in challenging young men particularly. I've preached on it here in chapel. But God does that work in people's hearts. And I think we should challenge young people to consider full-time vocational Christian service and the ministry and pastoral work, and provide them opportunities to test the waters a little bit, see if the Lord might grow them into that, they would discover the gift that God's put there. But in the end, you cannot hype the call to the ministry or manipulate people into something. If it's not there from the Lord, it is, they won't last. And then it'll mess up their mind a little bit, because they'll think they committed to something, but then they didn't go there. And I think it's best to, yes, emphasize it, provide the opportunities, and then keep encouraging people, because it's easy, even if you're called, to turn away or walk away from the calling. So we do that, but we don't do it in a way that is strong arming people into something that they're not well suited for.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a wonderful balance, I think. And we've got some other questions here we'll cover in the second episode, but this is a great start just to be able to get your personal perspective on pastoral training. So
good to be with you.
We'll talk again.